What's up, everybody? So today we're talking about BlackCell, who just launched something that will either be good or bad. It's kind of a generic statement, but I'd love to hear what you think about it after you know a little bit more about it. A few days ago, the admin of Black Ops Market posted on the HarmReduction subreddit about this new drug checking program that he specifically is funding. Black Ops is a relatively new market, first posting publicly to Dread back in October of 2024. It runs Monero only transactions that require mandatory PGP for all users, which is great. And it pushes vendor-friendly policies, things like automated vendor upgrades and employee accounts, which is the employee accounts is a relatively rare thing. I really haven't seen all that much, so that's interesting. But it's not one of the largest markets, but it's definitely one of the more security-focused and kind of vendor-centered ones to emerge recently that we've seen. Right off the bat, I have to say, even though I'm not super familiar with Black Ops, I do like to see and hear about people contributing things of value to the Darknet ecosystem. I also have to say, I kind of like their UI. I think their UI on their site's really good. People doing drugs is their prerogative. It's not something that I encourage, but I do think that harm reduction is a great initiative just in general. I also think that Darknet in general provides a strong harm reduction factor just because of its existence. We've had this discussion before on this channel regarding these things, specifically surrounding the fact that information is more readily available right off the bat when we talk about the Darknet. Typically, this is also very true with stuff like harm reduction compared to the alternative of the street. In addition to that, there's also no physical violence that you actually have to deal with when dealing with narcotics on the Darknet versus the street, where you can get, obviously, all kinds of stuff can happen. Now, it could be argued, and I wouldn't really agree with it, that this leads people to do things like commit crimes that they might not if they had to deal with a more nefarious person or shady person, right? Like some dude in a dingy alley. A great example of this would, I guess, be the paralegal who was recently busted, basically shipping fent into 3 different prisons using the legal mail system. Her name's Caitlin, and she probably, argument could be made that Caitlin wouldn't have gotten into what she got into had she not had this access to this stuff so readily available. I know this argument is absolutely one that people present because I've dealt with it, but I still think that the pros of the Darknet specifically outweigh its cons. So if you want to learn more about that actual story, it's on my site, doingfedtime or sambent.com, but I digress. Like, getting back to the actual topic at hand, this doesn't actually seem like a PR stunt or some kind of soft optics play regarding Black Ops. This is what appears to be an actual testing network, real product checks, independent results, and yeah, it's being paid for directly by the market itself, which is very cool. By their keeping their hands off the results, a complete separation between money and outcome absolutely exists. So we ask the question, why does this even matter, right? Like, if you spend time around Darknet markets, you already kind of know the issues that exist. Vendors on a regular basis tend to mislabel stuff. And to be fair, if they're caught, typically they're hit pretty hard for actually doing stuff like this, especially when it comes to selling fake pills with stuff like fent in them. This is really up to and including things like life sentences. In cases like that, many people don't have things like drug testing readily available to actually verify the contents of what they ordered from a particular vendor. And in the long run, they've had a kind of zero real way to verify anything. Most people aren't running gas chromatographers and mass spectrometers in their garage. So to back up, gas chromatography is basically the part that separates a substance into its different parts. And mass spectrometry looks at each part and figures out exactly what it is by analyzing its molecular fingerprint. These machines usually cost anywhere between $30,000 to over $100,000. And each test can be anywhere between $100 and $300, depending on the lab that you're actually dealing with. So not exactly something that you're doing at home. Regen kits are a thing. They exist, and they're fairly cheap, but they're hit or miss a lot of the times. And this move by them is kind of a direct response to that. So from the sound of it, they're trying to form a decentralized harm reduction system. And that doesn't rely on trust whatsoever. One where buyers test the product, post the results, and kind of everyone benefits from that. Results would be published on Dread in boards like SafeDose, HarmReduction, reviews, and tests for pay. Black Ops is funding this operation, but not completely controlling the results to give them that layer of separation, which obviously is important. It separates actual harm reduction from market propaganda. And this system could genuinely protect people and prevent deaths. So leads to the question of who can actually get involved. And the answer is pretty much anyone. Like if you're a buyer and want to test something you actually ordered, you could do it. You just message the mod mail on SafeDose or Black Ops. No vendor links are actually required. You just say what you want to test, and that's kind of it. Vendors also can join, but there's a catch, and you need to be vending on their market, which makes sense if they're footing the bill for everything to actually be eligible for that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't test stuff from other markets. You can, but if you want that verified badge, your storefront has to also be on their market. And it's kind of a clever loyalty mechanism that obviously they're paying for. But if I'm being honest, you kind of have to respect that form of PR. And if you're thinking of dragging your feet, I'll do it later, it's important to know that the application deadline is actually June 7th. So it doesn't last for forever. Testers stay pseudonymous. It just means essentially that you use a fake name or handle so that your real identity or market identity, I guess you say, is in this case hidden, right? Samples are bought anonymously and randomly, so vendors can't just cherry pick what they actually want to send. And the data includes things like regen photos, sometimes lab reports, and always the claimed substance versus what it actually was. You get actual insight and not just, upvote driven nonsense, which has definitely been a massive problem on Dread. I'm talking specifically about vote manipulation, and there are escalation protocols as well that apparently are being put into place. Vendors get exposed if they try to do things like bribe, intimidate, or fake results. And this is being designed to run without trust in anybody, which is absolutely an ideal way to go about it. Instead, the whole process is supposed to just run automatically. There are obvious benefits here. For buyers, this is the first time in a long time that you'll be able to actually make decisions based on more than just ratings or word of mouth. But it could be argued that even that is far more than what you actually get when it comes to actual street purchases. You're not going to find regen testing, or no vendor's going to pay for you to get your stuff tested. So it's definitely a branding boost for vendors with the verified badge, and obviously an edge over their competitors. For Dread, it's a good shift towards verifiable, real community standards, not based on nostalgia or shills or vote manipulation, but on actual test data. And even though it wasn't Dread that took this initial step forward, from my understanding, it's good to see it on there, right? Like a while ago, I had actually mentioned to Hugbunter that he should implement a form of community notes with the massive upcoming update, which I don't think it's actually been announced yet, but I would love to see like a crowdsourced fact checking system or ability implemented on Dread to kill some of the FUD and some of the nonsense. Anyway, the interesting part is how the results will actually be rolled out. You'll be able to find them in multiple boards on Dread. each result giving you the name of the product and what it claimed to be versus what it actually was tested as and the method that was actually used to test it. So depending on the case, that might be a simple regen kit or a full GCMS. So there's no hiding behind things like ambiguity anymore. And I love the fact that the receipts, so to speak, will actually be shown. And obviously this isn't bulletproof, right? Like there are absolutely some weak spots that will shine through that hopefully will get ironed out. For one, scale, right? Like if it really takes off, Black Ops will have to keep spending money and more to actually support it. That'll be fine until it isn't. And then there's standardization, right? Every tester needs to follow the same process or you'll end up with inconsistent data that really can't be compared. So it's nice to have a public framework so people can challenge or dispute results, not just delete them, but respond with stuff like counter evidence. And also the verified status kind of becomes meaningless if badges are just handed out like candy, in my opinion anyways. They need to be strict about who actually gets one of those, and it should kind of probably require stuff like recertification on a regular basis, or they risk losing it. So will this system change anything, right? Like, are vendors going to adapt, or are they going to move to places where no one's looking under the hood? Will the vendors that actually move be seen as suspect, right? Markets where admins maybe don't care whether their customers live or die so long as they get paid. Would you trust a verified test result more than a 5-star review on Dread, we'll say? What unintended consequences that are negative do you think could actually happen because of this? So I would say that this stuff doesn't just affect the market it actually came from. If it actually works, it could set a massive precedent, and it could force other markets to keep up or be left behind. And it gives users, not just speculators, a say in how safety should actually look. Overall, I'm kind of thrilled for this program to even exist and for a market to take an active interest in things like harm reduction instead of just making some nonsensical posts or tutorials or writing a couple articles about it and putting it on their website, but actually taking a step forward, trying to do some good for the community, as opposed to a lot of other markets which just kind of look for ways to exploit it with meaningless lotteries and nonsense like that that's going to raise additional funds for them, but not really do much for the end users at the end of the day. I would definitely love to hear about what you think about all this in the comments. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.